Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Grad Cracker webinar, where I'm so excited to be joined by Colas Rail. Colas Rail, one of my first ever clients at Grad Cracker when I started looking after employers back in 2014, and they've never left the site since. So we have a really strong history of working together. Today, we're going to be hearing from their graduate recruitment manager, Kirsty, and 3 of their graduates to give you a real insight into life at Colas Rail. If you're not familiar with Colas, then as a brief introduction, they're one of Europe's leading suppliers of railway infrastructure services. We're going to find out exactly what that entails throughout this webinar. We've worked really hard to ensure that you can find out everything you need to know about Colas Rail on Grad Cracker. Their company hub is full to the brim with information about their schemes and business activities. You can read about what life is like at Colas Rail, their culture and their services on their Grad Cracker company hub. And they've also been a sponsor of the rail infrastructure sector in the Grad Cracker Toolkit for the last 6 years. You can find a link to this within their company hub and through the Grad Cracker Career Centre. Their commercial and future leader graduate schemes went live on Grad Cracker yesterday, and Kirsty is going to tell us about these in just a few moments. So this webinar is perfect timing for all of you hoping to get your applications in very soon, and you'll be able to pick up some amazing hints and tips today. Okay, so let's get started. Joining us from Colas Rail today, we have Kirsty Panks, who will be giving you an overview of their graduate schemes and what she looks for in an application and candidate. And our graduates today are Adrian Lidovic, who is a project management trainee and joined Colas in October 2021, and Jess Scott and Tamsin Rolls, who are both assistant project managers and joined the graduate scheme in 2020. We'll be finding out more from our graduates shortly, but let's talk to Kirsty first. So hi, Kirsty.
Hi, Sophie. Good afternoon.
Can you tell me a little bit more about what Colas Rail does?
Yes, definitely. So just echoing your thoughts firstly, we're really excited to be doing this. We have had a long relationship with Grad Cracker and we've seen so many of our successful graduates come through yourselves. So yeah, we've been very much looking forward to this afternoon. So I'm going to give a really whistle-stop tour of who we are because we're quite broad in what we do within the industry. So just to kind of give some context, Colas Rail in the UK are actually a subsidiary of the Colas Group, who are across 1,400 sites across all continents. So we're actually part of a much bigger thing, and we employ over 55,000 people across the world. But here in the UK, Colas Rail are a division focused solely on rail infrastructure. So that's what we do, and every day thousands of journeys will be made by everyone in terms of on trains, on track, built and maintained by Colas Rail. So you're much more integrated with us as a brand than you probably might realise. And we have a really broad reach across the industry, which is quite unusual for a rail organisation. We've got 3 main divisions, and then we've also got we're parent company to a company called Lundy Projects. So in terms of our 3 main divisions, we've got an infrastructure division, and they deal with complex infrastructure projects, mainly in the south of the UK. And these projects can include anything from kind of signalling to telecoms, track renewals, electrification, design and survey. So they're involved in absolutely so many different activities, and 2 of the graduates who have joined us today work for the infrastructure division, so they'll be able to give you a bit of an insight into what it's like to kind of work within that area. We also have an urban division, so that's looking at urban rail, so that's the Midland Metro Alliance. And for anybody who's joining us today from the Birmingham area, they'll definitely know about the tram extension that's going on in and around Birmingham city centre. So we're involved in that project, and it's the West Midlands' largest transport regeneration project. And it's, yeah, as I said, it's dealing with a tram extension from Birmingham city centre out to the suburbs and surrounding towns. We then have a rail services division that's made up of freight and plant. So freight, we're a national freight operator. So across the UK, we transport goods. And then plant, I mean, I had no idea what plant was before I joined Colas Rail, so I'll just try and kind of explain what that is. But it's kind of on-track machinery, so things like cranes and tampers that you see on the track, and they support the infrastructure division with the work that they do. And then, as I kind of mentioned, we're a parent company to Lundy Projects, which is where Adrian is currently working. So they are a civils contractor. specialising in steel fabrication and installation, and they construct things like gantries and signals. And every single one of the graduates will be able to give you a much better overview than I can. So I'll leave it to them to kind of go through in a little bit.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Kirsty. That's a really good overview. I think there's always a lot more to Colas Rail than kind of meets the eye when you think of you as like an infrastructure rail services company, and there's so much more that you guys do, and so much opportunity therefore for graduates to get involved in lots of different areas, which kind of leads me on quite nicely to your graduate schemes. I mentioned a couple of them are live at the moment, but if you could give an overview of the schemes that you offer, Kirsty, that would be fab.
Yeah, so we've got 3 main graduate programs that we run, and every single one of them is run as a 2-year fast track program. All of them are non-rotational schemes, but they're there as a fast track to kind of for you to be able to reach your career ambitions. So the intention is that this is really, really fundamental to our succession planning within our organisation. And if you came and spent a day within Colas Rail, you'd see that there are graduates at all levels of management across the business. So it's genuinely pinnacle to what we do, and how we've been able to kind of be successful over the last 10 years since we've been operating the graduate programme. The opportunities, going back to what I was saying earlier in terms of how broad we are in what we do, the opportunities are really broad as well. It really depends on the division that you work in as to what you'll be doing. So there's really something that kind of suits everybody. But the 3 main programs that we have, we've got a Management Future Leaders program, which you touched on earlier. We've got some vacancies live within that program. So that's our management program. The role will really depend on which division you work on, and as you'll hear from Tamsin, Jess and Adrian, their roles are all ever so slightly different. So it's aligned to the Association of Project Management, so they work towards chartership throughout their program. And once a graduate's left the management program, they could go into working, in the future in any kind of role in terms of maybe head of operations. We've got project directors who've come through the graduate program, operations directors, and we don't look for a specific degree classification or type of degree. So you can apply from any background, so you don't necessarily have to be an engineer to join that program. Which leads me on to our engineering program. So you would need an engineering background naturally to join the engineering program. The reason for that being that you are going to be working towards becoming like a technical expert within your specific discipline. So as an example, we've got engineering graduates within signaling, we've got them within overhead line, freight engineering. So yeah, you'd spend the 2 years working to become a genuine expert within your field and looking at all the kind of nuances involved in the particular area that you work within. Again, there's chartership opportunities, really links with what kind of degree you've done previously and where you see yourself headed. So quite commonly, we have graduates going through the IMechE chartership route. We've had the IET too. So we kind of work with you on an individual basis to see what works best for you. And then thirdly, we've got our commercial program, and it's probably the program that is least known about actually, but this is a fast track route to becoming a quantity surveyor. And I'll just highlight what a quantity surveyor is. There might be a few people out there who aren't aware of actually what a quantity surveyor does, but they work across all of our divisions, and they're fundamental actually in all of the projects that we deliver. They basically control project cost, but they're really embedded in all of our project teams, and they will work with each project from the whole way through the life cycle, so right from the very beginning all the way through to the end. And within that program as well, there's chartership opportunities with the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors. And often our graduates who join us on our commercial scheme won't have had a background in quantity surveying, won't have necessarily studied that at university, and that's absolutely fine. We support that with further study once you're on the program. So typically graduates who join the commercial program will go through a master's qualification as part of that.
Amazing. That's a really good overview of all those schemes. And I think really interesting as well to hear that, if you're looking at a rail infrastructure company, you might automatically think you had to have some sort of engineering, mechanical or civil background. but actually you're open to, you know, all of those STEM disciplines. And as we're going to hear from Tamsin, outside of that as well, and I think it's quite interesting, you know, all the different backgrounds that we've got on the webinar today. So just kind of moving on to that then, Kirsty, what do you look for in an application when someone comes through to you and you see their application for the first time, what makes someone stand out?
Yeah, so I've kind of written down 3 things that I think are really, really crucial when you're making an application. And graduate schemes are competitive. They receive a lot of applications. So it's thinking about how you can make yourself stand out. I think it's fundamental. So firstly, I think it's really important to tailor your application. We know that you'll be applying to various different graduate schemes, but spending just a little bit of time can really pay off. Having a research of the company, looking at the hub that Sophie mentioned earlier on GradCracker, doing your research and finding out why you want to work for Colas Rail is really important. So have a look at the company, have a look at the roles that they have to offer, what other graduates have said about the company and what it's like to work for, and think about how that aligns with what you're looking for as well, and then weave that into your CV and your application and any cover letter. Think about like what we're looking for from a graduate. You know, what kind of skills have we said that we're looking for? What's highlighted in the job description? Just try and weave that in and have a think about how that you can reflect that in your application. I think is really key, because kind of moving on to the second point I wanted to make was around what makes you different. You might be up against kind of hundreds, potentially thousands of other applicants. So what really makes you different from the person who applied before you and who's going to apply after you? What makes you stand apart from them? So it might be things like, have you been involved in your local community? Are you involved in things at university? What kind of work experience have you had? And they don't have to be work experiences that are even necessarily directly relevant to the role that you're applying for. You might be applying for a project management role, but you might not ever have had the opportunity to kind of work within project management. But actually just having a look at what that role entails and actually listening to the graduates today talk a little bit about their roles, you'll probably hear, well, actually, do you know what, in my Saturday job or job that I did during the summer holidays, I actually have done a little bit of that, and that sounds really interesting because that's what I enjoyed about my job before. So have a think about what gives you an edge, and makes your application kind of sing and stand out from the crowd. Because you want to catch our eye, basically. We want to read your application and think, oh, that's really interesting, or oh, actually, that really aligns with the role that we're recruiting for. And the third thing that I wanted to mention is that this is a two-way street when you're applying for a job. It has to work for you and it has to work for the company. I think what's really fundamental is looking at the company's values, and if you go on our website and you look through the hub, you should be able to see what our company stands for and what our values are, and they really stand for everything that we do in Colas Rail, and we live by them, and they're at the heart of it. So ask yourself when you're applying to a company, actually, do those values align with my own values? Does it sit right with me? You know, if you're looking for a company that takes sustainability seriously, is this company invested in looking at reducing their carbon footprint or thinking about the kind of social impact or the environmental impact that they have when they're undertaking a project? It has to work for both of you. And I think if you can think of all those things and actually think about what makes you different, think about why you want to work there, and think about why this is important to you, actually, naturally, your passion for that job will come through in your application. And then we can see that. When we're looking through your application, we can see the people who genuinely have an interest in wanting to work for us, and then those that are probably just applying everywhere and not really necessarily thinking about what's right for them.
Brilliant.
And the only thing I would say is please, you've probably heard this a million times, please proofread your CV and your applications. Spelling mistakes just remain alive.
100%. I mean, everything that you've just said, Kirsty, is things that we reach over and over again when we are talking to our university students doing when we're doing our presentations and things, but it's great to hear that direct from an employer as well. You know, you're the one that's going to be looking at their applications. So to kind of reiterate everything that we always say is amazing. And yeah, I couldn't put it better. So that's great. Thank you so much for that, Kirsty. That's a great introduction to everything, your schemes, the company. We're going to head over now to meet the graduates. I'm going to hand you over to Carla to introduce everybody.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Kirsty. Brilliant introduction to Colas Rail. So let's now speak to the graduates and find out a little bit more about them and their journey so far. So starting with you, Jess, could you just tell everybody where you went to university and what did you study, please?
Hi, I went to Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh and I studied a Masters in Civil Engineering.
Thank you very much, Jess. And Tamsin?
I went to Birmingham City University and I studied English Literature.
Perfect, Tamsin, thank you. And like Kirsty and Sophie said at the beginning of the webinar, Colas Rail are open to all disciplines. So STEM students out there who are watching this webinar, make sure you get your applications into the schemes that are currently open. I did English Literature as well, Tamsin, so we've got something in common. Adrian, over to you. So where did you go to university and what did you study?
So I went to University of Hertfordshire and I studied mechanical engineering.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Adrian. So now I want to find out a little bit more about why you chose Colas Rail. So Jess, can I go back to you? Why Colas?
Yes, so when uni was coming to an end, I was starting looking for jobs and I thought GradCracker was the best place to start with that because I knew that I wanted to work within a STEM industry.
Yeah.
Then I came across Colas Rail. I thought it was a good opportunity to use my background in engineering, obviously because that applies to the rail industry. And then as I read more about the grad scheme, I really felt that it was a good place that would push me and challenge me every day. It would be a dynamic role and I'd get to learn a lot of new stuff.
Yeah, no problem. So particularly about Colas then and the graduate scheme, what really made you think, oh, I really fancy that particular scheme that you applied to?
I just think that the Colas grad scheme is not afraid to push you. You're challenged, but you're also mentored. You learn a lot, and working within the rail industry is a really interesting place to work.
Yeah. What do you think your biggest challenge so far has been?
I think you're given a lot of responsibility on the grad scheme, which is really rewarding. Yeah, I think taking on responsibilities can be challenging, but also at the end of the day, very rewarding.
Yeah, but you do have your mentor there and help behind the scenes though.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, you helped.
Perfect. Thank you, Jess. And thank you for the shout out for GradCracker. Adrian, I'm going to go on to you now. So similar question, why did you choose Colas Rail?
So for me, similar as Jess, after graduating, it's the first place to look at really is GradCracker. Alongside many other companies cited on the website, I came across Colas Rail straight away. Initially because I was interested in the railway industry, but really what was important for me was to look for a company that will expose you to a number of high diverse projects, and that's something that I felt Colas was really good at least presenting it to someone like me looking for a job as a graduate, and just the feeling of being constantly challenged through the process really is another thing that really attracted me to the program. And also you have testimony within the GradCracker website, so you can sort of learn from other people that gone through it and have a vibe of what the graduate program is all about. And the industry itself is something that was appealing to me. The railways is an ever-growing industry, and it's something that if you're willing to work hard and push yourself, you can go ways. Also, the company based again on testimonies on GradCracker, you could hear and listen to so many previous graduates that gone through the program and testifying about the support that they got from the company, and Also, having other previous graduate now on senior management positions, that shows you the amount of work that the graduate can really, the program can really push you onto, and give you those opportunities to grow within the business. And that's what I think at the end made me go for Call as well as a whole.
I think a lot of students say that who are using GradCracker, the Our People page on your hub is a really well-read page, or well listened to for the videos as well, because it does give you that real insight about what you could be doing for the career at Colas Rail. And this webinar is going to be the same as well. So as everybody knows, it is recorded and broken up into bite-sized chunks as well. So if you want to go back and listen to anybody's stories that you've witnessed today, obviously that'll be on the hub and in the Career Centre from early next week. So thank you very much for that, Adrian. And Tamsin, I'm excited to hear about your journey. So English literature student, go from there.
Yeah. So I actually didn't have a clue what I wanted to do while I was in uni, and someone suggested project management to me, and I thought, not my type of thing. And then I researched a bit more into it, and I decided that was sort of the route that I wanted to go down. So mine was more project management rather than like a specific industry. And then I came across the Colas Rail advertisement on GradCracker, and it sounded quite unique and quite different, but also challenging at the same time, and I quite like that.
Yeah.
But then after I had my interview, which was with like the management team, it kind of settled my mind, and I kind of knew it was the right way to go. Everyone was just sort of down to earth, and it was more like a formal chat rather than a proper interview process kind of thing. So yeah, that's why I decided to go with them.
So what made you think about project management, and then what made you change your mind? What about Colas Rail made you change your mind about that?
I think I was more scared about the idea of management and being in charge kind of thing, and taking that sort of responsibility. But obviously after researching and going through different job advertisements, because they're all different, they all entail different things, it sort of reminded me that it wasn't mainly to do with management. It was more actually sitting down with people and sitting down in a team and working together and planning and organising things more than telling someone what to do. So I think I was a bit naive in that sense at the start, but yeah.
At the end of the day, you're all working as a team anyway, aren't you? You might be the project management, but you all need to muck in together to get the job done at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Tamsin. So now let's go back and look at your journey so far. So starting with the interview assessment centre experience in general. So Jess, what was your experience like going through the application process?
So I applied through the website, and then Colas came back to me with a set of online tests. They're not like difficult or hard tests. I think it's just to assess how you approach different situations and stuff like that. And then after that, I was sent a brief to produce a presentation. So we had to research and analyse an incident that had happened on the railway a couple of years back. That was actually really interesting just to read about on its own anyway. So I sent that presentation off. Then I was invited to interview because this was in 2020. It was on Teams. There were maybe 5 people from across the business in the interview, which sounds a bit daunting, but really it was fine. As Tamsin said, everyone's really down to earth. Some of the usual interview questions, asking you how your attitude to safety and what you think you can bring to the role and your experience, etc., as Kirsty said, and then run through the presentation that you'd produced, and that was it afterwards. So I waited to hear back, and then you get told if you got the job or not.
Which obviously you did. Yay!
And now you're here. So with the presentation, and how did you do that then? Was it on PowerPoint that you had to send off, and then you had to present it at your interview? Yeah. Perfect, no problem at all. So Tamsin, Adrian, are your experiences quite similar to Jess's?
Mine was actually different entirely, I have to say.
Oh, good.
We got sent, you have to think I'm very new to the business as well. So we got sent a gamification right at the start after the application through the website. And there's an Arctic sort of gamification. You basically play games, and they're trying to work out your personality through the way you approach the game. It's not necessarily, you can easily get confused between trying to make the most point within the game rather than actually showing the recruiter who you are, and that's what they're trying to get. So after that, we then had an invitation to the assessment day. But this was in teams because of the pandemic. So what happened is they split it into two, because I think it would have been too heavy to do it all at once. So they had they booked on us on the day to do the sort of company presentation, if you like, the history, and talk a little bit about the railway. And then the second day, that's when we had our group work. Again, we were presented with a situation in the rail, and we were asked to come up with a plan, really. And so you give him a couple of minutes, actually an hour, I think it was, to come up with the solution, and then you present it. Straight after that, you then go on to your individual interviews, and then you get an answer a couple of days after that. I was then invited to the Lundy Project's headquarters, because I was going to be working for Lundy, with Lundy in this case. So I had a final interview with, or second X-ray one, with Lundy Projects, and that's how I got in.
Oh, brilliant. And he's still smiling, which is a really good sign. Always smiling. And Tamsin, your experiences are they similar or completely different to both of these?
No, so mine was quite similar to Jess's. So everything for me was online, obviously due to COVID. So first thing was obviously sending the application through GradCracker, and then Colas got back to me. So the first stage for me was the psychometric testing, which, as Adrian said, it's kind of like games, but I think you just have to sort of remind yourself, what does it show with your answers? What does it show about yourself? And then the next stage was the presentation on the incident and investigations, which I agree with Jess, it was quite interesting, actually. I think that's another thing that sort of encouraged me to go into the industry, because it was quite good to read about. And then had the interview with 3 members of management. So my manager was included in there as well. And then they just got back to me with the news.
with the news.
I was actually, because I was unsure of what was going to happen, I started a master's, and I was in my second lesson at the time, and I had to basically sorry, bye.
See you, I want to be you. But a really good journey so far. So Kirsty, what's it? Sorry, Soph.
I was going to ask exactly what you're about to ask.
And I was going to try and butt in and say. I think we're all thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Kirsty.
You're going to ask me what the application process and such like is going to look like now. So like so many companies, we had to adapt very, very quickly to the pandemic, and the way that we'd kind of run the recruitment process. There was a lot of similarities. They're absolutely right. You make an application, you then will be invited to do our gamification, psychometrics. So like they said, it is a bit like playing a game, but it's not a game. There's genuine science behind it. It gives us a really good indication of kind of your preferences and whether you'll be a really good fit for the role. Don't try and second guess if you ever get asked to complete one of these, because you can't just go with it and play how your natural preferences would be. And then the difference would be that we'll revert back to running assessment centres, again, where you'll actually get to meet people face to face, because it's really valuable to be able to meet senior managers and graduates and previous graduates. We try and invite a really broad spectrum of people along to the assessment centres, so that those that are invited can actually get a really good feel for what we do and who we are, and what the really good benefits of the role will be, and some of the more challenges, because that's really important to know before you join as well. So yeah, it's a 3-stage process. So not vastly dissimilar to what these 3 went through, but it won't be virtual. It will be in face-to-face now.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Kirsty. And then just quickly looping back to the grads, just to find out your hints and tips. Then you've all been through the process. So Jess, if you could highlight any hint or tip that you'd like to give to the audience, what would it be to be successful at Colas?
I think that just demonstrating that you have an understanding of the importance of safety and sustainability in what we do, because that's at, I suppose, the heart of everything that we do on the railway.
Perfect. And obviously that all of that information, so you can thoroughly research Colas Rail on the hub as well. Sophie and Sir Kirsty worked really hard to put all that together. So thank you, Jess. Tamsin?
Probably confidence, but not too much. Don't be cocky at the same time. Have the research and knowledge behind you. Make sure you can answer all their questions. You know, they're going to ask, you know, like what do you think about our company? What do we do? And if you can't answer that, then your confidence has gone out the window. So just be prepared.
Yeah, I think preparing, doing your research makes you feel confident, doesn't it? Because you go into a situation, you think, yeah, I can do this. I've got this. And finishing off with you, Adrian.
I think for me, it's got to be your smile and just showing how enthusiastic you are about the role, really. Because you have to think you're going to be working with most of the people you'll be talking to at your interview stages or your assessment centers. So you want to really show how much you want to be there and how much you know that would be how would I say the thing that you want the most at that point, at that moment of time, and they want to see that through you. And again, I'm going to just add on to that by saying, just look at Tamsin right now, and that's exactly what you need to be like, you know, and fantastic and, you know, energetic. And that's, and that would be good.
Oh, bit of love on her webinar, can't beat it. Friendly little bunch. You gotta love you. So I'm going to hand over to Sophie now. So thank you very much, everybody, and we're going to speak about your day-to-day lives and roles, I believe.
Yes, so thank you so much for all those kind of hints and tips and talking through the application process and recruitment process. It's a great way to kind of start that. But I do want to kind of move on and find out, you know, what your lives have been like since you've joined Colas Rail. So the type of projects you've worked on, training opportunities. So Adrian, I'm going to start with you because your role is slightly different that we've heard already. You know, you work for Lundy Projects, which is one of Colas Rail's subsidiary companies. So can you tell me a little bit about Lundy and the type of work that you've been doing so far?
So here at Lundy's, we are essentially, we are specialists in the fabrication of, steel structures and also civil engineering. We specialize in installation processes as well and working within, say, we build every structures that you can have on the railway, steel-wise, and we also be providing any supplementary civil work that goes with it. That's essentially what we do here at Lundy Projects. Also, we have all the design at the back of it and the management process within it as well. So,
Brilliant. And what's your role within? I know you're a trainee project manager, but what does that kind of really mean in the team at Lundy?
So as a young trainee, what you would concentrate on would be to look at the company as a whole. So you will look at the relationship between Lundy's and Colas to begin with. Then you will look deeper into Lundy's, trying to understand the processes, the fabrication processes, the installation processes, and every single department within the business. And moving on to that, then you start working with a senior management, sort of, you know, learning along the line, and you know, doing little jobs as you see fit, as you see how you progress. So it's not, there's no specific amount of job that you will be doing. I think it's really down to how quick you learn as a young trainee and how much responsibility they can chuck at you at once. And it's quite hefty at times. So yeah, good.
Brilliant. And Tamsin and Jess, can you tell us a little bit more about your roles at Colas Rail? Tamsin, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so I assist project leads in planning track renewals. So yeah, I'm a bit hard to explain. But yeah, that's one way that I've learned a lot of the knowledge that I've got now and all the experience just by shadowing other project leads. So eventually, as I gain more experience, that will be what I'll be doing, and I'll be able to do it independently. But yeah, we just there's a lot of things that you need to consider in the planning, deconfliction with other teams. You know, there'll be other companies that might be signing into your work sites that you need to communicate with, and there's a lot of different disciplines as well within Colas that, you know, we all sort of come together in one. So it's just about planning and communication.
So is this this could be track renewals? So this is track that needs replacing basically across the UK.
Yeah.
So it's not just one location you're working with, you're working in lots of different areas?
Yeah, so depending on obviously which section, which division you'll be working in, my depot does a different renewal pretty much every weekend. So I think we've got about 5 project leads at the moment. So they each have a several amount of jobs. And yeah, it's a bit hectic, but it's quite a good experience because it's always changing and you're always going to learn different things off different jobs. So it's good in that respect.
So do you have travel with your role then, Tamsin? Do you have to travel around to the different sites?
Yeah. So on weekends I only work on the actual renewal. So we'll have like preparation shifts and follow-up shifts and things like that. But I only work on the core works. But yeah, these can be, my routes at the moment are Wales and Western. So anything along that route, that's where I'll be travelling to.
Cool. Okay. We're going to come back to kind of shift and working patterns a little bit later on, but thank you for that introduction, Tamsin. And then Jess, can you tell us a little bit more about your role at Colas?
Yes, so it's pretty similar to how Tamsin described hers, except I work in enhancements, so I'm not having to travel around all the time. I'm just on one project at the moment. And we have track elements to what we do, but also overhead line, electrical and plant, civils, telecom, signalling. It's very multidisciplinary. So yeah, as Tamsin said, supporting the project leads in what they do and planning for the future works, ensuring that the works that are ongoing are going well, reporting to the client, speaking to contractors, Network Rail, the design team, just basically supporting them and ensuring that the project goes to plan. Yeah.
Wow, so there's lots of different, you've got lots of different hats on every time at the moment, then Jess, dealing with all those different types of people and the different projects that are ongoing in the overall project.
Yeah.
And do you think that is enhancement somewhere that you'll stay for a little while, or will you move to a different team, or will this be where you stay now?
I think for myself, I would really like to stay. It's really rewarding watching the project grow, but that's not necessarily to say that someone else in my position that wanted to get experience, you know, like in track renewals or overhead line or whatever. I think there's always opportunity to move in Colas if you express an interest. Yeah, but personally I want to stay.
Great. Okay, thank you for giving us an overview of all your roles. So the next thing I want to touch upon is projects. So what is the favourite project you've worked on so far since you've been on the graduate scheme? And Adrian, I'll come back and start with you.
For me, it has to be the Victoria Free. So London's involved with a lot of piling work on the Victoria Free. And for that, you need a lot of safety precaution taken into account because of the amount of work that goes through. First of all, how heavy they are and how dangerous they can be. So I'm part of a group. My team has been tasked to set up a safe working system around the construction that's going to go around, and I've kind of dug into it, and that's it. As a matter of fact, that's my first project. So yeah, I'm enjoying it really good. But yeah, that's essentially what I've been involved with project-wise so far.
Okay, can you explain? I don't completely understand the technicalities of everything you just said. So you mentioned like piling. What do all these things mean?
So with a gantry or any structures, really, you need a foundation with them. So the ground around tracks would normally, be not solid enough, if you like, for you to just say get the structure on it. So you need a foundation, and for that, sometimes you use pilings. The different types of piling. So the cylindrical steel that you would push on within the ground, and you would use as the base for your structure to sort of cantilever onto that. And so that's you need to do that, and also the transportation of the structures, the lifting of it, putting it onto the foundation, and getting all sorted. You need also with the rail and the lines going up and down, there needs to be a proper working system in place for everything to go smoothly, and obviously stick by the number one rule in the railway, go home safe. Yes, that's what I've been involved with, and it's quite interesting and technically involved. So
That's great. Thank you, Adrian. I know probably people watching this that are doing like a civil engineering degree will be thinking, oh my God, Sophie, why did you have to ask that question? But there will be a lot of people watching that have very little knowledge as well. So it's good to kind of always clarify on bits. So Tamsin, I'm going to head to you now. What's your favourite project so far?
I've had quite a few that I do enjoy. Paddington Platform 11 was probably one of the most interesting for me. So obviously all the jobs we do are different in different ways, but we have standards and compliances that we have to sort of reach and match up to. And yeah, Paddington Platform 11 was, let's just say, aged.
That was nice to put.
Yeah, a lot of the componentry is quite old, so if you were to replace it exactly how it is, a lot of the stuff doesn't exist anymore. You might have to get things cast and etc. So yeah, with that one we had to try and source different tools, different components, trying to somehow put it back together in one piece. So that one was quite interesting, but just it was the one job that I had a bit more knowledge and experience backing me at that point, so I could take a bit more of a responsibility on there. But yeah, I quite enjoyed that one.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting, working on it and on a station is kind of historic as that, and also you wouldn't want to be in charge of you wouldn't want to be the person that destroyed Paddington Station, would you? So you have to be very careful.
It was, to be fair, that was the first time I'd ever seen Paddington, and that was quite a cool experience, so it was good.
And then finally, Jess, what has been your favourite project so far?
So as I said before, I'm currently working on one big project with loads of different components. So working on that in general has been really interesting. Got exposed to a lot of different parts of the railway, as I mentioned before. Currently, as part of the project, there's we're doing some preparation for a change in alignment in the railway. So that is involving moving some overhead line structures, putting in some new retaining walls, and changing the landscape quite a bit. So as like piling and stuff that Adrian explained before, I'm finding that really interesting because I come from a civil engineering background. It's great to be involved in that. And then in addition to the day-to-day of the project, I've also got to be involved in a few of the innovation projects that we try in Colas Rail. So trying to implement new technology and stuff on our site has been really interesting as well.
Great. So there's so many different disciplines you just mentioned there, Jess, about what you're from a civil engineering background, but you've got so many different disciplines that you're involved in. So that's really interesting and great for our audience to hear. As we mentioned, Colas recruit from across STEM disciplines. So this kind of just reiterates the type of people they'd look for. We touched upon this briefly before, Tamsin, but we want to talk a little about pattern, because this is a conversation that Kirsty and I have had in the past about, weekend work and shift work is probably inevitable, really, if you're working in the rail industry, and it could be potentially off-putting to some people. But when I was talking to you guys in the run up to this, it's not like going to be away and you're going to be doing X, Y, Z. It needs to be, it's a lot more flexible than that. So I wanted you to just kind of run us through what your work and shift patterns are like. And Tamsin, if we could start with you.
Yeah, so I work Monday to Friday in the office, so that's when I'll be planning and organising, and that's usually 8 till 4. And then it's also depending on what weekend work we've got on as well. So we can either have 52-hour possessions, which is a Friday night start through to the Monday morning, or a Saturday night start through to the Monday morning. And there's 3 different shifts you can do. So you could do like a morning shift, an afternoon, or a night. But you can book these off if obviously you have other plans, so it's not as strict as what it may sound like it is. And you also get your rest days and things as well, so it's sort of flexible and works around you at the same time.
Great. And what about you, Adrian? What's your kind of working week look like?
I think it's quite similar to what Tamsin just said. A typical day for me will be from 8 to 3:30, maybe. And again, it's not as easy as that, because when you do get to work on weekends, you can have that day off, depending on where you're working and how they arrange it in place. But especially for me, I've not been exposed to too much weekend work so far because of the pattern of progression they've taken for me. As in, I've been concentrating more on what goes within Lundy's offices and the fabrication units, and I've just started going on to site. So I think later on down the line, I will be looking at a tad more work on weekends, but not as much as maybe the other students.
Okay, great. And Jess, is yours similar to Tamsin, or do you have a different working pattern?
Yeah, mine's pretty similar to Tamsin. So work Monday to Friday, and then depending on how busy we are, working at the weekends as well, either day shift or a night shift. I think maybe I found that a bit intimidating at first, but when you're involved in these projects, it's actually really exciting to go out on site and see it happening. So it doesn't feel like an extra chore or anything. It feels like a benefit of your job, really.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, you get so excited and so invested in it that you want to be involved, don't you? And I think it's just good to highlight that it's not like you'll be working every single weekend, that some people might think that you might be in the rail industry, and it can be flexible, as Tamsin said. If you've got personal commitment, you've got personal commitments, and the business will work with you on that. So what I wanted to do now is look at training and development, and just quickly, before we come back for some quick fire rounds with Carla, talk about the training opportunities that you've had so far, because I know all of you have had slightly different things going on. So Jess, I'm going to start with you on this one. What training and development have you had so far at Colas?
So when you start out, you're sent on a few training courses which help set you up for working on the railway. So personal track safety, which allows you to work on the railway, site manager safety training scheme, which gives you a good understanding of how to work on a construction site safely. We also do first aid. I've also been able to do a project management fundamentals course, which is part of the Association of Project Managers, so helping me work my way to getting chartered as a project manager. Also got in the diary a few more courses that will help me develop my understanding of track and overhead line. So that'll be really good. And then eventually at the end of the year, hopefully do the project management qualification with the APM.
Brilliant. And all of this is funded and supported by Colas Rail as part of the graduate scheme?
Yeah.
Amazing. Tamsin, what about you? Have you had similar experiences to Jess, or have you had more different types of training?
Yeah, so obviously we're on the same graduate programme, so mine's pretty much been the same as Jess's in terms of courses, but those are sort of like the site management training, first aid, etc. Those are all what are planned on the graduate programme already for you. So if you did need extra training, or you thought it might be beneficial in your role to have training that maybe isn't on the actual graduate program, then you can ask to get put on them, and pretty much they'll say, yeah, that, you know, it supports your learning. In terms of development, when I first started, so I've been shadowing project leads, plan jobs, but I've also been shadowing them on weekends as well. So on weekends, I'm a duty manager, so it's all dealing with all the things that go wrong, and potential overruns, which luckily I haven't had to deal with yet, but it's all sort of gaining knowledge and experience of people that have already been through the scheme, or have that knowledge behind them as well. So that's a different way of getting your development improved.
Brilliant. Yeah, so learning from people around you, which is, you know, obviously such a huge part of any job, is learning on the job. And then finally, Adrian, have you got anything to add to that? Anything that you've done differently to Tamsin and Jess?
Not really. It's pretty much all the same. You know, I've secured my personal track safety training and my audio fundamental qualification as well. But I think it's the only thing I might just add on it is that you need to think they can tailor those trainings after you if you know if you have a desire to go to a different direction. Say if you have your heart set on more knowledge on health and safety, for example, they can do, you know, the couple of courses out there like the NEBOSH course that they can actually, you know, push you onto, and again, you know, fund it for you. I think it's, yeah, for as long as you are growing as a graduate or as a, you know, as an employee, they will be willing to do that. I think it's their point of view on that.
Brilliant. And I think, you know, obviously we touched upon earlier, Kirsty, with the engineering graduate schemes and the commercial schemes, you know, the qualifications and the training that you'll get on those elements, rather than the Future Leaders programme will be different. But, you know, they do support you through to that chartership, and they will give you the training and development that you need to be able to do your job to the best of your ability, which is fantastic. Right, we're going to head back to Carla now for some quick fire rounds before we finish off.
My favourite part of the webinars. Thank you very much, everybody. So yes, two quick fire rounds, starting with Standout Moment of the graduate scheme so far. So I'm hoping these are going to be some belters. So Jess, what has been your standout moment so far?
I think, so as Tamsin said, that we work as duty managers on the weekend. That entails a lot of dealing with issues that arise, and I think just recognizing that where you've come from in the beginning when you have no idea what to do, and now can work with confidence in a number of situations to resolve them. I think that's done. When I recognize that stood up to me.
I liked when you said problems which may arise, because Tamsin had a little bit of a smile there. She's like, yeah, that was a knowing smile. I saw that little glimmer. Tamsin, on to you then, your standout moment.
Probably going on track for the first time. So when I first started, there was a job going on which was like a blockade. So it's you know, it's sort of like more than your normal few days away. It's like, you know, it could be up to say 10 days of work. And my manager asked me if I wanted to just come down and see what was going on. So I sort of had like a permit thing. So I didn't actually have my qualification yet. You can go on track with the permit as long as you're with someone. Yeah. And that was, yeah, quite interesting. It's a bit of a shock at first because you don't really know what to expect. And then seeing lots of the machines and like the tamper and trains and things, but from track level is a whole different experience. I don't think people actually realise how big they are. I certainly didn't anyway. So it was just, yeah, a bit of a shock moment.
Well, I used to live in an old railway cottage on the East Coast main line, and when they were doing work on the line, these big machines used to come at the front of my house, and the whole house used to just shake. And just think, oh, they're doing some work on the line. Thanks very much, Tamsin. Yeah, exactly. I was just thinking at the beginning, I was actually staring at Kirsty thinking so. Do you remember when Colas first signed up with us, and I saw one of your machines, and I took a picture, and I was so excited. I sent it to Sophie. It's like, oh, look, there's Colas outside my house.
And I used to do that when I used to travel up from London to the York office, and I'd see the Colas freight trains. I'd be sending pictures and sending them back to the office. Get really excited.
We are losers.
You don't notice it until you work for.
No, you don't.
No, you don't.
No, we get that excited. Adrian, so apart from this webinar, obviously, your standout moment.
It's got to be this.
I know, love, I know.
But in all honesty, for me, it was because one of the things that I had to do was work with the project development or the business development department of London Project. And one of these days, I got to go to a high-end meeting. I don't know how else to put it, but I just remember being in there and thinking, I'm sat in here and I'm listening to all of this, am I trusted with all of these informations? And it's almost, it hits you because you suddenly realize they trust you,
Yeah. You
are worthy of being in that office or being around that table and listening to the conversation that's been taking in place. And, you almost need a little bit of a pinch in your, to suddenly go, well, I'm here, right? So, yeah, I think that's for me was, special, I think. So, yeah.
Oh, that's a real nice story. You deserve it, love. You've worked hard, haven't you? Thank you, Adrian. And now, interesting fact about Colas Rail. And Kirsty, you've been quiet. So I'm going to come to you first about your, I know, first time for everything. So what is your fun, interesting fact about Colas?
So I was going to take it off on a slightly different route. So my fun fact for Colas is around sustainability. So you might not necessarily think of the rail industry as or you might think of it more as big machinery, lots of, using a lot of diesel, not necessarily being too kind to the environment, but actually we're constantly striving to reduce our carbon footprint and the impact and improve the impact that we have on the people that we, come up against day to day. So yeah, sustainability is massively important, and actually the graduates are really important in that journey that we're on. So always involved in things around innovation and sustainability. We do challenges around it as part of the graduate program. On actually, we recognise that you're new in the industry, you see things from a different perspective. So what do you think we can do differently to make things better? That's our fun fact. We care a lot about the environment.
Drum roll, please. Thank you, Kirsty. Tamsin, your fun fact.
So we're part of the Southern Rail Systems Alliance, which is like on the thing there.
I think
we do track renewals pretty much across the country. So the ones that we in my office focus on is the Western and Wales route, and sometimes the Wessex route as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Tamsin. Adrian?
My fun fact is since the acquisition of London Project by Colas Rail is now one of the very few companies out there to be able to design, fabricate and install railway structures all in one house. Yeah, that's
pretty cool, isn't it?
That's really cool.
Thank you, Adrian and Jess.
I think my fact is that we're not just infrastructure construction, we also do, as part of the enhancements, like we've been demolition and decommission of railways and heavy civils work and deep drainage and things like that. So it's not just lane track.
Yeah, there's much more to Colas Rail than just lane track. Thank you very much, Jess. So thank you all the grads, so Tamsin, Adrian and Jess for joining us today. I'm going to hand over to Sophie, who's going to finish off with Kirsty.
Thank you so much. It's been really lovely listening to you guys today and hearing more about you. But yeah, finally, before we sign off, Kirsty, have you got any final hints and tips for our audience thinking of applying today?
Yeah, there was just one thing that I wanted to finish off on. So Sophie, you mentioned it at the beginning, but we do have some vacancies that are currently live on the hub at the moment. So go and have a look and see whether they're something that interests you. Hopefully they are. But what I wanted to mention as well is that we're a very dynamic business. We're fast paced and there's always change. With that change brings opportunity. So we recruit year round. So if the roles that we've got at the moment aren't quite what you're looking for, keep an eye out on the hub, because there will no doubt be something that will pique your interest at a later point. So yeah, keep an eye out, and if you follow us on there, you'll get an alert when our opportunities are live, so you can go in and have a look.
Amazing, thank you, Kirsty. It's done my job for me there. So So thank you once again to our amazing panelists from Colas Rail, and of course thank you to Carla as well. I've loved hearing about all of your roles and experiences today, and this will be such a fantastic resource for our audience using their applications. So make sure if you're going to apply to Colas Rail to let them know you've watched this webinar, because it will really show that you've got a keen interest in them and that you know a lot about them from just literally listening to this webinar. So next week, it's our final webinar of the season before we break until the new academic year. So Carla and Jessica will be joined by leading health and hygiene company Essity, and that's next Thursday at 2 p.m. But thank you once again to Colas Rail, and yeah, see you all soon.
Bye.
Very much, Colas. Bye-bye.
Bye.